Navigating the Journey of Productive Struggle for our mathematics learners. This was a training that was given at the NCCTM conference in Greensboro this year. Carrie Turner and I also did one at the Math Summit at NC State. This has just been adapted somewhat, and it's going to continue to be adapted since we're doing this online and we're not able to interact face to face. But hopefully some of the things that you see here will help you with understanding more about what productive struggle is. I also have a presentation that I created for parents at the Olive Chapel Math Preview Night for iHeart Math and Science Day that I'll be sharing as well. So let's start out with this cartoon and think for a minute how you might be able to relate to this from your mathematics instruction. So you are a math teacher, and we're going to go on a journey from productive struggle to hopefully getting our students to better understand through conceptual understanding. The original date of this was November 8th, and that has not been adapted, but this is when it was originally given. My childhood math memories are like blank because blank. Think for a moment as to what picture resonates with you and why it resonates with you, and how we want our children to view their mathematics instruction. I know I personally can relate to the time test. I had a major fear of math as a child because memorization for me was very tricky. So I might feel more like that times test. However, I want my kids to feel like they're learning with the second picture and as well as the fourth picture. We really don't want to see any of our children looking like the third picture. So here's today's itinerary, and again, it's adapted a little bit because some of the learning that's going on in this presentation was supposed to be hands-on, but we will just go with it. So excursion number 1, productive versus unproductive beliefs. This was an activity that I did at Olive Chapel last year. So if you were in the staff meeting, you had an opportunity to sort some productive versus unproductive beliefs with teacher moves for math instruction. Our second excursion, what is productive struggle? And we'll see a little bit about what productive struggle really is with our mathematics learners. Excursion 3, planning for productive struggle. This might be something that you can do after the video since we won't have time to do it now. And I will set up some sort of sharing of how you maybe plan for productive struggle in your math instruction. And then we'll reach our final destination. So beliefs about teaching and learning mathematics, and this came from the book All right, so we'll reach our final destination. So beliefs about teaching and learning mathematics, this came from Principles to Actions, which is an NCTM book, and the book will be at the end of this presentation. You can see where it comes from. So last year during a staff meeting, we talked about productive beliefs and unproductive beliefs with teaching and learning mathematics. So take a moment to read the following parts and think to yourself which side would be productive and which side would be unproductive. So you probably saw that on my left-hand side, that unproductive beliefs are on the left and productive beliefs are on the right. So when we're teaching mathematics to our children, we want to make sure that we're engaging students that promote reasoning and understanding. We're the facilitators. We want children to have a chance to talk and reason through instead of us talking to them. If you learned math the way I did, you probably had more of the teaching that was on the unproductive side. So that's excursion one. In this actual training, you would have spent time sorting these into productive and unproductive beliefs. And of course, the discourse is huge, and that is an opportunity to have discussions with your PLT about productive versus unproductive beliefs. So, what is productive struggle? I'm not going to read everything on here to you, but I am going to read this one. When students grapple with something new, they often try to use concepts they figured out in other contexts to see whether they'll work under new conditions. They might extend mathematics they've learned in school or connect to new experiences they've had in their daily lives. That's a whole point. We want children to have a direct connection with the math that they're learning. So when students are self-discovering versus us telling them everything, they're able to have a better connection. It's kind of like when you're getting your children to try and eat what you cook for dinner, and maybe they're resistant. And then you say, hey, why don't you cook dinner with me? And since they had a part in it, they're more likely to eat it. Not always, but in some cases. This quote came from Becoming the Math Teacher You Wish You Had, Tracy Zager. Her work is great, and the book is a really great book that you'll see at the end as well. And I have spoken about this book before. So now it's your chance to have a little bit of productive struggle. So I do want you to do this because this is going to make you think through what productive struggle might look like for our students. Of course, I would wish that you had people to share with after you've had a little bit of time to struggle through this on your own. But without using a calculator, work in small groups to work in small groups to solve the following problem. Now, when I've done this in the past, we have taken it first to solving independently and have some independent think time. So let's spend a few moments doing this. There are 7 girls on a bus. Each girl has 7 backpacks. In each backpack, there are 7 big cats. For every big cat, there are 7 little cats. Here's your question. How many legs are on the bus? So at this point, I would like you to pause, and I'm going to trust that you're pausing the video and start working through this problem. So now we're going to talk about how you felt during that activity. I did this with our parents at the Olive Chapel I Heart Math Night, where we had parents come in and do some learning around mathematics instruction. And I first had them work alone, and I walked the room and I noticed their faces. When they were working independently, some of them were very stressed out and very uncomfortable. After I gave them a little bit of time to work independently, they then joined forces with their table. It was interesting to see that some of the parents did not want to engage with anybody at their table. They wanted to stay independent and have that quiet work time. And then other parents were very excited to be able to talk with one another. The parents in particular that I noticed were a mom and dad, so a husband and wife duo, where they did not want to talk to each other through this whole activity. They wanted to come to their understanding on their own. So let's discuss this. What feelings might you have experienced as you and your team work toward a solution? Now, of course, you did not have a chance to work as a team unless maybe you found somebody at your house to do this with. So maybe that's a good idea to go through, and maybe if you have a child or a spouse or a roommate, go through and solve this problem together and talk about the feelings that you experience. What skills beyond mathematics might have been helpful to you today? So if you do have a chance to communicate, and I'm kind of thinking about the 4 C's here, communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking, did you have any outside the box feelings? Were you able to think creatively throughout this process? And what might be some reasons for providing students with opportunities to engage in productive struggle? Think about your brain, just like your heart. When you work out your heart, it gets stronger. When you work your muscles, they get stronger. Same with our brain. If everything just comes easy and there's no learning, their brain's not simply not getting stronger. I like to tell that to my students all the time, that if they're struggling through something, then their brain is getting larger and they're learning more. When I did this with the parents, I did stop it off. I stopped independent work time at a point where I noticed that parents were getting frustrated. You've got to find that sweet spot with your students as well. When they're getting frustrated, you've got to find that point of what questions might you ask in order, I'm so sorry, in order to further their thinking. Questioning is the best way to help guide your students through productive struggle. So as we're thinking about instrumental understanding versus relational understanding, we've got our Google Maps. I don't know how many of you are like me, that sometimes I always have my Google Maps or I have Waze going. I know where I'm going. A lot of times I just want to see if I can beat the time, of course, without speeding, because we don't want that. So let's think about this. You moved to a new town. You learned to get from home to work to Chick-fil-A, and Chick-fil-A to home. Of course, I'm using Chick-fil-A because my kids love Chick-fil-A. I know that. It is in my brain. I just have it. This is instrumental understanding. So then later on, you decide you want to explore the town. You're not going anywhere specifically, although I never do this. I like to have the end in mind, but that's just the way I operate. So you're trying to create a cognitive map of your town in your mind. This is relational understanding. We want our students to be able to have that time to get to an unidentified location. Pose with a place that you want them to end up, and how are they going to get there? What turns are they going to take? Will they have to make any U-turns? Do they know it directly, or do they go about it in a roundabout way? How is discovering where they're going on their own giving them that relational understanding? We want them to connect to their learning. Again, this is from Tracy Zager, Becoming Math Teacher You Wish You Had. Another quote about productive struggle. I'm going to give you a moment to read that on your own and think about what this quote means to you. How does this quote resonate with you? So there we go. We have finished excursion 2. Of course, if we were doing this face-to-face or via webinar or Zoom or something, we would be having a lot more discussion, and this might take a little bit longer. But hopefully when we are all back together, or hopefully you'll send me a message or an email letting me know what resonated with you. So here's some strategies that I thought were amazing to help support productive struggle. It's something also, not these exact margin symbols, but I have experienced some productive struggle with my children during homework. And I have found that when I talk to them, it causes them to get frustrated and to shut down. So sometimes just jotting little notes to students can help further their thinking. So here's some margin symbols that Tracy Zager has in her book. That students can use in order to communicate with you, because they don't always want to raise their hand and tell you that they're struggling. So I'm going to give you a moment to look at those, and I will also share this presentation with you. So if you do watch it, just shoot me an email, mpriest, Priest, at wcpss.net, and I will send you this presentation so you'll have this. So margin symbols are going to help combat that learned helplessness. I know this is something that I've been discussing with PLTs and with the intervention team, that sometimes we can't tell if what's happening with our students is just learned helplessness. This gives them an opportunity to be advocates for their own learning. And there we go, right there. I've got this whole presentation just right up here in my head. It also gives students an opportunity to self-assess. And when we think about the Hattie practices, self-assessment for students is very high, with having a correlation rate. And students might use a variety of symbols. So maybe part of something was understood, but maybe another part of the problem was still causing them confusion. And I wouldn't say that these margin symbols would be something that you would just use for math instruction. This can really apply to any sort of learning that our students are experiencing. Maybe ELA, maybe science, social studies. I'm thinking about the recorder for my son. Maybe as he's playing the recorder, what might he need help on? Not that I could necessarily help him, but this would give him a chance to self-assess where he is with his music instruction. Building math mindsets. This is another great resource. U Cubed. I know I've used some of the U Cubed with some of my intervention students. We want students to have that mathematical mindset community. I know with CMAP, in the beginning of the year, all units are developed around having a mathematic mindset community. So here are some more ways that you can promote this within your classroom. U Cubed, again, is a great resource to go to. There's several videos there that help support that growth mindset, as well as activities that you can provide for your students. I just know that sometimes it's hard to find all that time to put this in, but it's a great way to get your students feeling positive about math. So here are some more ideas and recommendations for task and lesson design. Keeping those lessons open, encouraging multiple methods. This makes me think a lot of CGI, cognitively guided instruction, where students are able to solve a problem and they are able to get to that strategy or use the strategy and get to that ending without necessarily being taught the method. Again, this is from Mathematical Mindsets by Jo Boaler. I'm currently reading her book right now, and I'm really enjoying her suggestions within the book. Questioning. I love questioning. It took a lot of practice for me. I remember walking around the classroom with my depth of knowledge questioning or the Bloom's taxonomy question stems, because that was something that I really wanted to improve with my teaching practice. So any sort of open-ended, goodness gracious, any sort of open-ended questions that we can ask our students, that is just going to further guide their thinking and move along their mathematical understanding. So we're almost there. Planning for productive struggle. So this is something that would be a great way to get some further planning ahead for when we are back in school. So choose a lesson you'll be teaching to find opportunities for productive struggle. This might be something you're going to have to read deep into your lessons. You cannot just look at a paper that's in CMAP, a worksheet, and think that you can plan productive struggle from there. You really have to dig deep into the lesson and find where those opportunities might lie. So again, this is if you have access to your county's curriculum. This is mainly because I was doing this at a conference in Greensboro and people were coming from everywhere. Or maybe you're watching this on YouTube and you search this and you're not just an Olive Chapel teacher. So this is a great time. This is where you're going to want to access those lessons. If you don't have access to your curriculum, what could you build? How could you build in your lessons? Possible resources. If you're a North Carolina teacher, Tools for Teachers, it's a great place to go that has your resources that you can dig into. They've got lessons, they've got performance tasks, they have common formative assessments. It's just a great resource that aligns to the North Carolina standards for mathematics. And then, of course, if you're a Wake County teacher, you have Learning Central and your CMAP lessons that you can go to dig into looking for productive struggle. This planning document, I will, again, if you're watching this, just send me an email and I will send this planning document to you. So you will have a place where you can do some planning. So that's your final destination with your reflection. Of course, you would want to still go back and you would want to do that planning time. But I want you to think about these 4 pictures and where you are currently in your understanding and planning for productive struggle. These are some of the recommended resources, some of the resources that were used. So becoming the math teacher you wish you had. There's great applicable activities that you can do. Principles to Action, that's another great one for the National Council of Teacher of Mathematics. Another Jo Boaler's book, Mathematical Mindsets, that's another great resource that has productive struggle as a center point. So intuitive experiences must be acquired by the student through his or her own activities. They cannot be learned through verbal instruction. So this is just another way of thinking about teaching mathematics. We have got to get our students to self-discover with their understanding of certain concepts. So at this point, spend some time doing some planning. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. Again, it's M as in Mary, Priest, Priest, at wcpss.net. I will send you this presentation as well as answer any questions that you might have as you're planning the journey of productive struggle for your students.